As Australian companies compete on a global stage, it's essential that they enhance their initiatives to scale, innovate, and boost productivity. Many new disruptive technologies driving these initiatives benefit from the speed, reliability, and scalability of 5G connectivity. Despite the benefits of 5G, many Australian businesses have misconceptions when it comes to unlocking the full potential of 5G wireless wide area networks. John Baladian, Vice President Asia Pacific with Ericsson Enterprise Wireless Solutions, joins us to share the findings of Ericsson's recent Enterprise State of Connectivity Survey and discuss how managed 5G wireless wide area networks are helping Australian businesses meet today's challenges and prepare for tomorrow's opportunities. John, tell me about the findings of Ericsson's recent Enterprise State of Connectivity Survey.
So I think firstly, that survey was really aimed at talking to enterprises in Australia about 5G for business. I think I wanted to make that delineation because, 5G for business use cases like IoT, mobile connectivity, fixed wireless access, a little bit different to the consumer technology that most people would probably be familiar with 5G on their cell phones. I think it was very telling actually because what we discovered was that 87% of respondents felt that secure, fast connectivity like 5G was imperative for them to reach their goals for business, like implementing AI and the new kind of use cases that they're looking to deploy across their organizations. And so we understand that secure, fast connectivity is really, really important. I think what was really also telling was that only 40% of the 500 that we surveyed were actually starting down that 5G journey. So while there is some movement in those enterprises, we still have a long way to go, I think, to being able to say that we've got the majority of customers, heading down that journey and being able to realize their goals as they progress their business. The other thing also that I think was really important is that, a lot of companies felt that maybe Australian businesses are falling behind in the way of research and development and being world leaders is in the industrial space or in the segment that they play in on a worldwide scale. So I think it was really important to understand that while some are heading down the journey, the others have got still a long way to go.
So you raise a good point that sometimes when people hear 5G, they think about consumer applications and don't stop to think about the business applications. What other misconceptions tend to stop businesses from embracing 5G?
Well, I think there's definitely a perception that 5G is an expensive technology to both implement and to manage. I think the numbers were something like around 40 to 50% of them felt that there was a high cost to implement and manage. Now, I guess the real question is, do enterprises really understand the cost of not implementing 5G and what that's going to cost them from a long-term basis? A lot of businesses are looking at reliable connectivity to run their point of sale systems or to run their transactions, especially if you're, say, in the retail space. And downtime can kind of cost thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of dollars. And so the question really is, can you really afford to not do it and have that kind of resilient, high-performant, manageable network? I think also if you look at how 5G has progressed, there are now tools available that are very easy for enterprises to use and adopt to help them to manage that. And as well as a lot of training tools are available. So I think we've come a long way in the way that the technology has evolved and the tools have evolved for customers. And I think right now we've got a little bit more of a perception problem in that they don't understand exactly the benefits they can get from implementing this type of technology.
So they might be concerned that they lack the skills to deploy or manage the infrastructure, but they don't necessarily appreciate that there are other ways to approach that.
That's exactly right. I think there are also, if you think about the partner landscape, for example, there are partners that have specialized in helping customers organizations implement 5G connectivity technology. And especially as customers are trying to implement new technologies like AI and machine learning, those companies are essentially scaling up to also help customers in that way.
And they also might be concerned about issues like coverage, perhaps because they don't understand how 5G can work in unison with other technologies.
No, no, for sure. I think what we're starting to see now is that satellite or LEO satellite is starting to become, very prevalent as a connectivity method for enterprises. And I think that there are strategies that they can employ that can combine both 5G connectivity and satellite, or even multiple of those technologies. So you deploying a device that has multiple WAN sources and being able to swap between those WAN sources, basically depending upon coverage and depending upon outages. That provides, I think, customers a way to be able to really build highly resilient networks. In some cases, even using, say, two SIM cards, two 5G carriers with two SIMs in a single device and being able to pick between the carrier that has the best signal, or even connecting satellite technology and failing over between the two, depending on the location, or even if they want even better performance and resilience, even bonding the two together, creating a single WAN connection. These are all possible today. And I think, going back to the perception issue as well, I think a lot of customers aren't really aware that this kind of technology is available for them to deploy.
So they might think they have to choose one technology or one provider, and that's it. You live with it, whether it meets your needs or not.
Yep, that's right. And right now, there's the ability to actually combine multiple WAN types together, including, of course, your standard fixed line connectivity as well, and then making smart choices based on availability, speed, cost, and that kind of thing.
So we were talking before about some of the business benefits for 5G. Can you go into a bit more detail there?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So with 5G, you get, of course, faster speeds, lower latency, sometimes better availability. So when you're looking at Industry 4.0, which requires that kind of speed and latency, I think it unlocks a lot of new use cases that customers can consider deploying to advance their business and really create better outcomes for them. Ultimately, the connectivity and the power of that enables customers to start implementing AI, even on the edge of the network as well as in the data center. And so unlocking of those new use cases, I think, is really, really important. Everything from that to starting to see now some customers implementing combinations of even, private 5G networks, autonomous vehicles. And so when you're looking at, say, mines or shipping ports, they're starting to implement kind of the speed and the low latency of 5G to really to run autonomous vehicles, even replacing the trucks that normally go around moving containers around a shipyard to fully autonomously guided vehicles using computer vision, AI analytics right on the edge of the network.
So these days, there are more solutions and technologies where doing things on the edge becomes more important. So that would be where 5G would enable models that in the past might have struggled to stand up.
Yep, I think that's absolutely true. There are a lot of these kind of new use cases that are starting to emerge, and we're starting to see customers start to deploy them. There's also, I think, some traditional, 5G use cases as well, which I think are just as important. If you think about I think there's two or three come to mind. I think the first one is I like to call it day one connectivity. So when you're implementing a new site, let's say you're a retailer and you're waiting for your fixed line connection to come along, you've got the ability to use 5G as a primary source to deliver that kind of speed and agility, let's call it, to get that
Yeah.
connection out as quick as possible. But then we switch that back over as a failover at a later date, moving sites within a particular location. So we're seeing the construction industry, for example, do that as they move the office location from spot to spot at a construction site. So a little bit more about the agility there of deployment of networks. And then let's also not forget that in many cases, using 5G from an OpEx perspective has a potentially a lower long-term cost saving than implementing fixed lines, especially if there's any kind of ability or that kind of thing that needs to be implemented as well.
So those use cases you mentioned where the benefits of 5G are that you can get up and running quickly and that you can move around quickly, is that something that some people might just still assume the old way of doing things and know that you just have to live with the fact that when you set up, you've got to wait for someone to come and physically hook you up to the internet?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the perception, right? That you just sort of had to wait for for that network connection to arrive. And now I think customers have got a lot more choices. The ability to get that day one connection is a way of mitigating lost revenue. So in the past, you just sort of had to wait and say, well, I can't take credit card transactions or I can't do Apple Pay transactions today. Well, now you can do it from the very first day by having that 5G connectivity right from the get-go.
So there would be some people who would still think of 5G as a secondary fallback technology that comes after a fixed line connection. But in many ways, a 5G connection has a lot of benefits compared to a traditional fixed line connection.
No, absolutely it does. I think both from speed and latency point of view, so definitely you can get as good or better performance from a fixed line. I think that's kind of the basic fundamentals of it. And then from that perspective, we're starting to see that primary 5G is becoming more and more prevalent. That's where I've seen some customers have, or some enterprises, should I say, start off with that day one connectivity and then realize, actually, this is good enough to run my business. And they've actually continued down that path and said, you know what, I'm not going to worry about going with the fixed line anymore. So I have seen many instances where the fixed line actually never gets connected because they've realized that A, business can be run on a primary 5G connection, and B, from a long-term perspective, having that, and I think it's been proven that cellular connectivity has better uptimes than fixed line connectivity. And so you're starting off with potentially better performing circuit, and then two, one that has even better uptime capabilities than the standard fixed circuit that they initially were looking to deploy. So, that I think industry is calling that fixed wireless access. And a lot of people look at that as, again, as a consumer technology, where if you're in a place where there's no NBN, then your only choice is 5G.
Yeah.
I think now what we're seeing is decisions being made where primary 5G for business is absolutely very relevant and very achievable.
And then when it comes to network replacement, how does a managed 5G wireless wide area network maximize ROI?
So that's a really, really good question. And I think with the right tools in place, that's really important. Having something like a single pane of glass management tool that enables somebody to be able to look at all the different devices, be able to track the locations of those devices, quickly and easily onboard something, a new device in a new location. And I think that's the beauty of 5G connectivity, because putting a SIM card in and sending it to a remote location and switching on is sometimes all you need to do to get that connection in place and to get that location up and running. So from a convenience point of view and a speed to execution perspective, as well as being able to see everything in a single management platform, I think that's where businesses are really kind of seeing the benefit of that.
So, how do modern 5G wireless wide area networks tackle coverage issues and deliver built in resilience? And how does security play into that?
I think for many modern 5G connections, there needs to be a strategy around having multiple WAN sources. And I think we talked about that at the beginning, right? But they can also mean multiple carriers or multiple carriage. So having the ability to have SIM cards, multiple SIM cards in a single device, and being able to connect to different cell towers in different carriers, I call that carrier diversity, where you're not relying upon one carrier. If one of them has an outage, you still have a secondary SIM card in there working with a different carrier. So I think that's the first one. The other is we talked about LEO satellite. I think earlier on, that's absolutely another mechanism that if it can be managed by a single WAN device, then you're able to then have multiple sources and then potentially even multiple LEO satellite providers, if you want to add redundancy from that perspective, or even bonding that all together into a single link. So I think that's where we've reached in 2025 in kind of the modern WAN connectivity landscape, where we have not only multiple carriers, but potentially even multiple LEO satellite providers providing connectivity for a true wireless connectivity experience.
And that's a real game changer when it comes to connectivity, because Traditionally, you've basically had to choose one provider, put all your eggs in one basket, and hope that they will be able to meet most of your needs in most of the places. But the idea that you can, you might even want to call it take an each way bet, is not something that you've always been able to do, is it?
That's correct. I think that's a technology that's been evolving over the last couple of years. I think we've absolutely reached maturity from that perspective, and I think you can also take it one step further, have multiple WAN devices, if you want to, but that is 100% available today, right now, for enterprise customers to
Mm.
adopt.
So LEO low Earth orbit satellites get a lot of attention these days. And in theory, they've got you covered everywhere. So why would you be better off on a solution that combines something like 5G with LEO to fill in the gaps rather than just going with LEO on its own?
I think there's a couple of things to consider. I think firstly, and this is a little bit of a technical topic, but it's got to do with latency.
Hmm.
So the further away you are from the satellite or from the cell tower, the higher your latency is. And so there are many applications that prefer to have a low latency connection for the best possible experience. And so if an enterprise is looking for a particular use case, sometimes 5G is absolutely essential to be able to get that lower latency connectivity. And then that's when satellite, of course, then becomes a secondary, because a connection, even though it's a higher latency, is better than no connection at
Hmm.
all. There are also other use cases where, for example, if you're deploying into a vehicle, see a lot of companies have fleets, a lot of emergency service providers have vehicles as well. 5G was designed as a mobile technology to allow connectivity while you're on the move. Now, LEO satellite connectivity, some of them do relatively well at low speeds, some of them don't connect very well at all at higher speeds. And so if a vehicle is moving, then 5G is a preferred connection mechanism. When the vehicle is stationary, then LEO satellite might be good enough for it. And so what we're seeing from enterprises in Australia is, yes, they might be going down the path of both technologies, but they need to make decisions on which technology is being used depending on the application and the needs of that application from a performance perspective.
So, from a business perspective, how can IT leaders who lack the resources or expertise to deploy and manage 5G networks benefit from a managed 5G wireless wide area network solution?
I think there's a few things to think about here. Going back to what I said earlier on around management platforms, I think that's really key. I think it's easy to purchase 5G connectivity from any number of vendors or manufacturers. I think the real key here is having the right software management platform, a very mature platform that can do everything from the zero touch provisioning to alerting and analytics around the health of the fleet or of the WAN devices that are being managed and deployed. So I think that's really, really important. And having a tool that's easy to use, available anytime, anywhere from any number of different devices, I think that's also really key. And I think the third one is everything from our telcos to managed service providers are starting to build special, or have already built, practices around 5G managed wireless WAN. And so if a customer is unfamiliar, with that kind of technology, there are tools available to make it easier for them. There are trainings available to help them use the tools. And if they're really looking to take advantage of that technology but don't want to invest in that, then there are organizations that have invested in that capability and can do either a rollout or a fully managed solution where they're taking care of the health and welfare, or well-being, should I say, of the network,
Mm.
and just providing analytics information and SLAs to customers, so that whichever way they want to go, they've got options, I think, today.
Businesses keep finding new applications for connectivity, new way it can help them meet different kinds of challenges. How is it helping them with their sustainability initiatives?
So it's a good question, actually. And this is something that I think we probably wouldn't be talking about a few years ago.
Mm.
But I think almost all enterprises, or all businesses in Australia are thinking about their impact and how they can monitor their sustainability and be able to report that back up either to shareholders or to the community. I think 5G inherently, and together with IoT technologies, inherently enables businesses to monitor, their environmental impact. Everything from if you're managing a fleet and looking at the fuel efficiency of your fleet, being able to use mobile wireless WAN technology in the vehicles to determine the best routes that those vehicles take, implementing IoT in agricultural environments to look at water usage and things like that. And 5G is able to scale from everything from the mobile use cases all the way through to IoT, so that they're able to get the rich data the business needs to be able to provide the reporting and the information, because that information is going to give them the data that they need to then be able to create the reports and information they want to share with the community around what they're doing in sustainability. So it's really about monitoring, measurement, data, and analytics. And I think it's those kind of use cases that will really help customers or businesses to be able to do that.
And of course, one of the benefits here is that with 5G, they're able to do all this in real time. It's not just modeling, it's not just guesstimates. They can see in real time what's happening and get real measurements.
Yeah, that's right. I think in the past, it might even be the data was measured and stored, and then someone would have to go out and extract that information. So, yeah, 100% right now, it's real time. And I think that businesses are demanding real time information. In some cases, it's business critical to do that. And in other cases, it's important to maintaining monitoring of the health of the business.
So, what other ways are 5G wireless wide area networks helping businesses future proof their operations?
So I think it's putting in a 5G wireless wide area network or managed wide area network is important both from a future proofing perspective and a resilience perspective. So implementing that technology today is going to be important to build out the new use cases like AI, for example, with the ability to have network reach in locations that obviously weren't able to go, have that low latency performance we were talking about, and then also being able to completely manage that solution. I think this is really about building a highly resilient, high performance, secure network for businesses to be able to use for all of their use cases moving forward.
Tell me about network slicing. That was something that I hadn't really heard of until they started introducing 5G.
So network slicing is a feature of standalone 5G networks. What it enables a telecoms operator or someone who's running a 5G network is to allocate a specific amount of bandwidth with guaranteed service levels for download and upload speeds. More often than not, upload speeds. And so if you go back to your MPLS days or if we remember those kind of networks where there were dedicated and very specific speeds and SLAs associated with that, we're able to take that type of SLA and guarantees and apply that in a wireless environment. And so we're starting to see, we actually had a use case recently with a broadcast service where we had a dedicated slice. I think we showed that on Mobile World Congress earlier this year, where a dedicated network slice was used to broadcast video from a sports game. There was a dedicated amount of bandwidth allocated for that particular location. And that was a way to ensure that we had the right frame rate, no dropouts, no jitter, no stuttering from that broadcast over a 2-3 hour period. That's a fixed network slice. So that's a slice for a particular location. The next generation of that will evolve to multiple slices. So you can have multiple SLAs for any given location. That enables, say, multiple customers to each have a slice in a particular place. And then lastly, we'll see that move into mobile network slicing. So that will enable, let's say, a vehicle that, for example, has CCTV, inbuilt IPTV transmission going, being able to move from cell tower to cell tower and still maintain the service levels that they're looking for. So it's a real innovation that we're starting to see be announced by telcos around Australia and we should be implemented fairly soon.
And again, this is something that it may not occur to people that wireless technology can do this because they think of it as a best effort sort of a service. They know what it's like to go to the football and you can't get on the call because everyone's trying to use the phone at the same time. The fact that you can take 5G and treat it like a fixed service really changes your options for what you can do with it, doesn't it?
Yep, it absolutely does. If you think about it, it's also a way for telcos to monetize that. And so when you're at that football game and if you pay a little bit more, potentially you've got the ability to have dedicated bandwidth. It might not just be about calling your friends, but it might be about being able to upload video footage, Instagram messages, things like that. That's the consumer side. But
Yeah.
think of the better for the businesses from that perspective. It's about having a dedicated slice of and dedicated bandwidth to be able to do point of sale transactions and ensure that at the busiest times when you've got 50,000 or 100,000 people at a game, think about it as the football grand final, places like that. You've got the retail operators in the venue have dedicated bandwidth for the point of sale systems. You've got video footage that you'll be able to stream from a security perspective for the security operators at the venue, everything from there to the police and security that are operating in the area from either their handsets or their vehicles. So it does provide for some fantastic new use cases that comes with 5G for business implementations.
You've been listening to John Baladian, Vice President, Asia Pacific with Ericsson Enterprise Wireless Solutions, addressing the misconceptions that Australian businesses might have around the cost, management, and coverage benefits of 5G connectivity. For a deeper dive into the facts and figures around enterprise 5G connectivity in Australia, please have a read of the accompanying article on itnews.com.au.